Hi, horse friends. If you've ever finished a ride on a hot summer day and wondered, should I scrape the water off after hosing my horse? Should I use cold or lukewarm water? Can cold water cause tying up? You're not alone. These questions have been debated in barns for decades, and chances are you've received completely different advice from different trainers. The good news is that now we have a much clearer answer, and it's based on scientific research rather than tradition. Recent guidance from equine researchers and experts is reinforcing something that has been studied for years. When a horse is overheating after exercise, continuous application of cold water over the entire body is one of the fastest and most effective ways to lower body temperature safely. Today, we're going to explain why horses overheat, why cooling them quickly matters, what the latest recommendations say, whether you should scrape the water off, and how you can keep your own horse safe during the hottest months of the year. So let's get started. One of the biggest misconceptions many horse owners have is that sweating is an incredibly efficient cooling system. In reality, horses are not nearly as good at dissipating heat as many people think. During exercise, muscles convert stored energy into movement, but only a relatively small percentage of that energy actually becomes forward motion. The majority is released as heat. That means every stride your horse takes is producing heat inside the body. The harder the horse works, whether that's jumping, galloping, endurance riding, barrel racing, dressage, eventing, or simply trail riding on a hot afternoon. Your horse certainly sweats, and sweating is important, but sweating alone doesn't remove all of that excess heat. In fact, if temperatures are high or humidity is elevated, evaporation becomes much less efficient. Sweat may simply drip off the horse instead of evaporating, and without evaporation, far less heat is removed from the body. That is why horses can continue getting hotter, even after they have finished exercising. Many owners assume that once they stop riding, the danger has passed. Actually, the opposite can happen. The horse's muscles are still producing residual heat, and the heat continues moving through the bloodstream toward the surface of the body. If the horse cannot get rid of that heat quickly enough, core body temperature may remain elevated for longer than we'd like. This is exactly why post-exercise cooling is so important. Heat stress is not simply about your horse being uncomfortable. If body temperature climbs too high, horses can become weak, depressed, dehydrated, uncoordinated, or even collapse in severe cases. Overheating can become life-threatening and requires immediate veterinary attention. Fortunately, we know a great deal more today about how to prevent that from happening. For years, many riders were taught a fairly specific routine. You hose the horse, you immediately scrape every drop of water off, then you hose the horse again, then scrape again. Some people were even told that leaving water on the horse would somehow trap heat like a blanket. Others worried that cold water would shock the muscles or increase the risk of tying up. These ideas became deeply rooted in horse culture, but research has repeatedly failed to support them. Instead, the evidence points in a different direction. Research comparing cooling methods has shown that cold water reduces body temperature faster than warm water, even under hot and humid conditions. Studies have also found no evidence that properly applying cold water increases the risk of tying up or muscle injury in healthy horses after exercise. Perhaps the biggest change involves the use of the sweat scraper. According to current recommendations, if your horse is dangerously hot after strenuous exercise, repeatedly applying cold water over the entire body without scraping it off between applications actually allows cooling to continue more efficiently. The water absorbs heat from the horse's skin, and continually replacing warm water with fresh cold water helps draw even more heat away. Scraping immediately removes some of that cooling water before it has finished doing its job. Now, this doesn't mean a swept scraper is suddenly a bad tool. If your horse has already cooled down and you're trying to dry them before loading into a trailer or putting on equipment, scraping excess water may still make perfect sense. The key distinction is this. If your goal is maximum cooling of an overheated horse, the science supports continuous cold water application over the whole body rather than repeatedly scraping after every rinse. Another myth that continues circulating is that you should only cool the legs because cold water on the body is somehow dangerous. Again, that's not what current evidence suggests. Researchers emphasize cooling the entire horse, including the large muscle groups of the neck, shoulders, back, hindquarters, and chest. Those muscles generated much of the heat during exercise, so that's exactly where you want to remove it. Think about it this way. Imagine taking a person with a fever and only placing an ice pick on one ankle. It wouldn't make much sense. The goal is to remove heat from as much of the surface as possible. The same concept applies to horses. Cold water works because heat naturally moves from warmer objects to cooler ones. As the cool water contacts the horse's skin, it absorbs heat. Once that water warms up, replacing it with fresh cold water allows the process to continue. It is a simple principle of heat transfer, but it can make an enormous difference in how quickly the horse recovers. So what should a practical cool-down routine actually look like? First, don't simply finish your ride and immediately return the horse to the stall. Allow the horse to continue walking. Walking helps maintain circulation and supports recovery while you begin cooling. Next, remove tack when appropriate, so more of the horse's body is exposed. Then begin applying plenty of cold water over the horse's entire body. Continue applying fresh cold water rather than giving a quick rinse and stopping. If you have multiple buckets available, keep replacing the warmed water with cooler water. If you have a hose, continue running fresh cold water over the horse. Throughout the process, monitor your horse carefully. Watch their breathing. Watch how quickly their respiratory rate returns to normal. Observe their attitude. Look for signs that they're becoming brighter, more comfortable, and recovering appropriately. Make sure fresh drinking water is available as well. Modern recommendations generally support allowing horses to drink during recovery, rather than unnecessarily withholding water after exercise. Of course, every horse is an individual. A lightly ridden horse on a mild morning may not require aggressive cooling. An older horse with PPID, an obese horse, a horse with equine metabolic syndrome, or a horse competing intensely during extreme heat may need much closer attention. Humidity also changes everything. Many riders only focus on air temperature, but humidity can be just as important because it reduces evaporation. Even if it doesn't feel blisteringly hot outside, high humidity can make it much harder for horses to lose heat naturally. This is one reason we're seeing more competitions adjusting schedules, adding cooling stations, modifying transport recommendations, and taking heat mitigation much more seriously than they did even 10 or 15 years ago. The equestrian community has learned a tremendous amount from international competitors held under extreme hot competition. The equestrian community has learned a tremendous amount from international competitions held under extremely hot conditions, and much of that knowledge is now filtering down to everyday horse owners. One thing I think is really important to emphasize is that horse care evolves. Many of us were taught methods by wonderful trainers who genuinely wanted the very best for their horses. They were working with the information available at the time. Science doesn't mean those people were bad horsemen. It simply means we now have additional evidence that helps us make even better decisions. Horse welfare improves when we're willing to update our management practices as new research becomes available. That's exactly what responsible horse ownership looks like. It means asking questions. It means staying curious. And it means recognizing that traditions are valuable, but evidence is valuable too. As temperatures continue rising across many parts of the world, understanding how to recognize overheating and cool horses efficiently may become one of the most important practical skills every horse owner can have. So if someone at the barn tells you that cold water is dangerous or insists that every drop must immediately be scraped away, it may be worth sharing what current research actually says. Continuous application of cold water over the horse's whole body remains one of the fastest and most effective methods for reducing body temperature after strenuous exercise. And the evidence supporting this approach continues to grow. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. Were you taught to scrape the water off immediately after hosing your horse, or has your barn already switched to the newer cooling recommendations? Thank you so much for joining us, and remember, I am not AI. If you listen closely, you can hear me breathing.